I still remember that morning. God, it seared into my brain like a bad burn mark. There I was, flour up to my elbows at 4:17 a.m., prepping the dough for our food truck's famous sourdough sandwiches when my phone buzzed. Probably Landon saying he'd be late again. I wiped my hands on my already stained apron and checked. It wasn't a text, it was a TikTok notification. Weird, because I barely had time for social media back then. Someone had tagged me. When I opened it, I literally had to grab the counter to steady myself. There was my husband, with his arm wrapped around Autumn's waist, both of them laughing inside my food truck. Our food truck. The one I'd emptied my 401k to buy. "This is Chef Landon Sullivan coming at you with some big news," he was saying with that charismatic smile that once made my heart flutter. "We're taking Sullivan Street Eats to Austin. New city, new chapter." Then Autumn leaned in, her perfectly highlighted hair falling just so, and added, "Sorry, Whitney, but he needed someone with actual vision beside him, not just an assistant." They laughed. They actually laughed. I played it again, and again. 7 times total before I realized I'd sunk to the floor. Still in our cramped rental kitchen where I'd been prepping food for a truck that was apparently halfway to Texas by now. 3 years. 3 years I'd been waking up when most people were still in deep REM sleep, prepping everything so that darling Landon could show up looking fresh at 10 a.m. to helm the kitchen and charm the customers. 3 years since I'd convinced him that my culinary degree could help his charisma create something special. "We're a team, Whit," he'd said when we'd first met at that restaurant in Minneapolis where I was sous chef and he was just a charming waiter with dreams. "You've got the talent, and I've got the personality. Together, we'll be unstoppable." God, I was such a fool. I'd met Landon when I was 28. I'd graduated top of my class at culinary school in Chicago, worked under 2 James Beard winners, and was finally making a name for myself at Laurel, this upscale farm-to-table place. Then Landon started waiting tables there, tall, with those hazel eyes and that smile that made even the sternest hostesses melt. He'd hang around the kitchen after shifts, watching me work, telling me I had magic hands. "You're wasting your talent here, Whitney," he'd say, perched on a prep table as I finished inventory. "These stuffy restaurants with their tiny portions and ridiculous markups? People want real food with heart." Landon had big dreams but no formal training, just natural charm and a few signature dishes he'd perfected. I was the opposite, technically skilled but shy, more comfortable behind the line than working the dining room. We seemed perfect together. When he proposed the food truck idea after we'd been married a year, it made sense. The food scene in our small Ohio town was just taking off. Sullivan Street Eats would feature elevated comfort food, my recipes, his face on the marketing. "We'll start small," he'd promised. "Build our brand, then maybe a brick and mortar someday. Possibly a cookbook. Sky's the limit, babe." I withdrew $87,342 from my retirement account. Paid the penalty. It was our seed money for the truck, equipment, permits, and initial inventory. I'd been saving since my first job at 16, working through culinary school nights at a diner. Every tip, every extra shift, carefully put away for someday. And someday had arrived in the form of a retrofitted truck with a tiny kitchen where I would spend the next 3 years of my life. The schedule nearly killed me those first months. Up at 4 a.m. to prep, serving lunch crowds from 11 to, then dinner service 5-8, with Landon handling the window while I cooked everything. Home by 10 p.m. to collapse, recipe plan, and do it all again. We were making just enough to keep going, building a small but loyal following. Landon started doing these little TikTok videos. Behind the scenes with Chef Landon. He'd film himself finishing dishes I'd prepped, garnishing plates I'd designed, talking about inspiration for recipes I'd developed. Our social following grew. People started coming from neighboring towns to try Landon's famous smoked brisket sandwich and Chef Sullivan's signature mac and cheese. My recipes. My techniques. His face. I didn't mind. Not really. We were partners. His natural showmanship was just as important as my culinary skills. At least that's what I told myself as I iced my swollen feet each night. That was before Autumn started showing up, 3-4 times a week at first. This gorgeous redhead with expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head, always ordering our seasonal special, always complimenting the chef's vision. She'd linger at the window, laughing at Landon's jokes, talking about the Austin food scene where she'd just moved from. I noticed them getting closer. I wasn't blind, but I was exhausted, focused on growing our business. When Landon suggested we needed someone to handle our social media and marketing, Autumn suddenly had the perfect background. When he started scheduling menu planning sessions with her that somehow never included me, I told myself it was just division of labor. When our truck won Best New Food Concept in the regional newspaper, Landon and Autumn went to accept the award. I was prepping for the next day. The photograph they printed showed them holding the plaque together, beaming. The caption didn't even mention my name. Still, the business was finally turning real profit. We were booked for festivals across the state. We had merchandise with our logo that was actually selling. Things were happening just like we'd planned. Or so I thought, until that TikTok revealed what had actually been happening. All those late-night inventory sessions. All those marketing meetings. The way our bank account had been slowly draining for weeks. Something Landon had explained away as investing in growth opportunities. They'd taken everything. My money, my recipes, my business, my husband. And they were laughing about it. That first week after they left, I was in shock. I could barely function. Our apartment, well, my apartment now, still had Landon's clothes in the closet, half-empty bottles of his cologne in the bathroom, a shopping list in his handwriting on the fridge, but no food truck, no business, no savings. I called him probably 50 times before he finally answered. "Whitney, come on." "This was inevitable," he said, sounding irritated that I'd interrupted whatever new life he was building. "We both know you were just the backup kitchen help. This was my concept, my brand. People come for me, not your boring food." "Your concept? Your brand? I paid for everything, Landon. That's my life savings driving to Texas right now." He had the audacity to laugh. "Should have gotten it in writing, chef." The way he said chef, like it was a joke. "Look, I'll send divorce papers once we get settled. Consider this a business dissolution. It wasn't working." Wasn't working? We were finally making money. We had plans to expand. No, I had plans to expand. You had plans to keep playing it safe with the same boring menu in the same boring town. Autumn and I are taking Sullivan Street Eats national. We're already talking to investors in Austin. I was hyperventilating, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles went white. "Those are my recipes, Landon. My techniques. Your recipes?" He cut me off. "Prove it. Everything went out under my name. Every video, every review, every feature. As far as anyone knows, you're just the prep cook who couldn't handle it when the business outgrew her." That's when I heard her in the background. Autumn, saying something about a meeting they were late for. Landon covered the phone, but I still heard him say, "Just Whitney having a meltdown. Give me a sec." Then back to me. "Look, I gotta go. We're meeting with a restaurant group. Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows Sullivan Street Eats started in Ohio. Maybe I'll even give you a shout-out in my cookbook acknowledgments." "Cookbook?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, we've already got interest. Street Food Revolution by Chef Landon Sullivan. Has a nice ring, doesn't it? Anyway, gotta run. Take care, Whit." He hung up, just like that. I felt like I was drowning. There was this pressure in my chest that wouldn't go away. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Friends from the local food scene kept calling, asking what happened. I couldn't bear to tell them how completely I'd been played. Then came the videos. Not just that first TikTok, but a whole series documenting their big Texas adventure. Landon and Autumn hamming it up for the camera. Day 3 in Austin, and we've already got a line down the block. Check out our feature in Austin monthly. Each one twisted the knife deeper. The comments were worse. People asking where the other girl was. Landon responding that he'd outgrown his early partnership and was finally free to pursue his true culinary vision. Their follower count kept climbing. I lost my apartment 2 months later, couldn't make rent. Moved in with my older sister temporarily, sleeping on her couch, working whatever shifts I could pick up at local restaurants to try to rebuild some savings. Line cook jobs, prep work. Back to the bottom after years of working toward my dreams. The lowest point came when I was scrolling through Instagram one sleepless night and saw that Sullivan's Street Eats had been featured on a Food Network segment about innovative food trucks. There was Landon, charming as ever, doing a step-by-step demonstration of my grandmother's special spice rub, the one she'd taught me when I was 9 years old, the one I'd never written down because I knew it by heart. He was calling it Sullivan's Secret Spice, while Autumn smiled adoringly in the background. I threw my phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. My sister came running in, thinking someone had broken in. She found me curled into a ball, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. "He took everything," I kept saying. "Everything I worked for. Everything I am." Megan sat beside me, stroking my hair like our mom used to when we were kids. "No, honey, he didn't." "What are you talking about? He literally stole my life." "He took the truck. He took the money. He even took your recipes," she agreed. "But Whitney, he didn't take your talent. He didn't take your training. He didn't take what's in your head and your hands. That's still yours." I didn't believe her then. Couldn't see past the humiliation, the betrayal, the sheer financial devastation. But sometime around 3 a.m., staring at her living room ceiling, something shifted in me. A tiny spark of, not quite hope yet, determination maybe, or just pure rage. I'd been so busy playing support staff in Landon's dream that I'd forgotten my own. Before him, I hadn't wanted a food truck. I'd wanted my own restaurant. Small, intimate, focused on the kind of soulful, technique-driven food I'd trained for years to create. I'd given up my dream to support his. And look how that turned out. I picked up my shattered phone the next morning. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. I blocked Landon on every platform. Blocked Autumn, too. Blocked the Sullivan Street Eats accounts. Then I opened a new document and started writing. Not a business plan. Not yet. Just recipes. My recipes. The ones I'd created over years of training and experimentation. The ones Landon was now passing off as his own. But also new ones. Dishes I'd always wanted to try. But Landon had vetoed as too fancy or not on brand. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something like myself. I'd like to say I immediately bounced back, launched a successful restaurant, and showed Landon what he'd thrown away. But that's not how real life works. The truth is, I spent 6 more months working double shifts at other people's restaurants, saving every penny. Rebuilding my credit that had been destroyed when Landon maxed out our joint cards before disappearing. Staying up late sketching restaurant layouts and menu ideas in a notebook. No bank would touch me with my credit history. No investors were interested in a failed food truck operator with no assets. I heard no so many times I started to expect it. But here's what Landon never understood about me. I'm stubborn as hell. Growing up with 4 brothers in rural Michigan, you learn to fight for your place. Surviving in professional kitchens dominated by men who assumed I was there to clean up after them, that taught me persistence. I found a tiny space on the edge of downtown, former coffee shop that had gone under during COVID. Just 800 square feet, with a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to work without bumping elbows. The rent was manageable only because nobody else wanted such a small location. My sister Megan and her husband loaned me $10,000, their vacation fund. My brother Jack drove down from Michigan to help with renovations. We painted the walls ourselves, installed second-hand fixtures, repurposed the coffee counter into a small bar. I found dining tables at estate sales and restaurant auctions, mismatched chairs that we painted the same shade of deep blue to unify them. I called it Whitney's. Not creative, maybe. But after years of hiding behind Sullivan's branding, I needed my own name on something. The menu was small, just 8 dishes that rotated seasonally, plus daily specials. I couldn't afford a full staff, so I cooked everything myself. Hired one server, Zoe, a culinary student who wanted to learn back-of-house operations too. We opened for dinner only, Wednesday through Sunday. Opening night, we had 11 customers, all friends and family. The second night, 7 customers. By the end of the first month, I was panicking. The math wasn't mathing, as Zoe would say. At this rate, I'd be closed before the 3-month mark. I'd lose my sister's money. prove Landon right. Then something unexpected happened. A local food blogger came in, Natalie Chen. I recognized her immediately. She'd featured Sullivan's Street Eats back when we first opened. I nearly had a panic attack thinking she'd make the connection and write some humiliating piece about the failed food truck wife trying to make it on her own. Instead, she ate quietly, took a few discreet photos, and left a generous tip. 3 days later, her review dropped. Whitney's may be the best-kept secret in town. In an era of overproduced dining experiences, this intimate chef-owned spot offers something rare: authenticity. Chef Whitney Sullivan's food speaks for itself, technically flawless yet deeply personal, with flavors that tell a story of classical training filtered through a distinctly Midwestern lens. The duck confit with cherry gastrique alone is worth the visit. No gimmicks, no social media stunts, just extraordinary food in a welcoming space. Get there before everyone else discovers it. She'd used my married name, which I hadn't legally changed back yet, but she'd called me Chef Whitney Sullivan. Not Landon's assistant, not the prep cook. Chef. I cried when I read it. Alone in the restaurant before opening, I just sat there and sobbed. That weekend, we had a waiting list for the first time. The weekend after, we were booked solid. I hired another server, then a dishwasher, then a line cook to help me keep up with demand. I was working 80-hour weeks, but for the first time, it was for myself. Every positive review, every happy customer, every empty plate coming back to the kitchen, all of it was mine. Evidence that I wasn't just the help, that I had vision, that I had always been the talent behind our success. I still checked Landon and Autumn's accounts sometimes. Old habits. Their Austin expansion seemed to be struggling. Fewer posts, less engagement. A few comments asking why the food tasted different lately. I tried not to feel vindicated. 6 months after opening, I had my first truly profitable month. Small, but real. I paid myself an actual salary instead of just scraping by. Called Megan and told her I'd be able to start repaying her loan ahead of schedule. That same week, I got an email that made my heart stop. The subject line: Potential Investor, Donovan Culinary Group. Reed Donovan was legendary in the restaurant world. Former chef turned culinary investor with the Midas touch. His restaurant group had concepts in New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, never anywhere as small as our town. The email said he'd be visiting family in the area and had heard about Whitney's. Would I be open to a conversation about potential partnership opportunities? I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. Thank God I didn't. Reed Donovan was nothing like I expected. In my head, a successful restaurant magnate would be slick, polished, maybe a little arrogant. Reed showed up to our meeting in worn jeans and a simple button-down 10 minutes early and asked if he could see the kitchen before we talked business. He was tall, had to duck slightly through the kitchen doorway, with salt and pepper hair and the calloused hands of someone who'd spent years cooking professionally before moving to the business side. 45, maybe, with laugh lines around his eyes and a quiet intensity when he asked about my processes. This duck confit, are you doing it traditionally? 5-day cure? I nodded. 7 days, actually. I add juniper berries to the cure, and I render the fat myself. It's more work, but the flavor difference is worth it. He raised an eyebrow, impressed. That's old school. Most places take shortcuts. I'm not most places. He smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes. I'm starting to see that. We talked for hours that day. About food, about business models, about my vision for Whitney's. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone. How I'd funded Landon's food truck. How he'd left with everything. How I'd had to rebuild from nothing. So, this place isn't just a restaurant to you, he said, understanding in his eyes. It's redemption. Sounds dramatic when you put it that way. Doesn't make it less true. He swirled the wine in his glass. Your ex-husband, he's the one with that Austin food truck? Sullivan Street Eats? My stomach dropped. You've heard of it? Heard they're closing, actually. Word is the chef couldn't deliver on his expansion plans. Quality issues. Investor backing fell through. He watched my reaction carefully. Didn't know there was a connection. I tried to keep my face neutral. There isn't. Not anymore. Reed's investment proposal came 3 days later. It wasn't a buyout. It was a true partnership, capital for expansion, infrastructure support, but creative control would stay with me. Whitney's would remain Whitney's, just with the resources to grow thoughtfully. I don't want to change what's working, he explained over the phone. I want to help more people experience it. 6 months later, we opened a second location in Cleveland. Bigger space, same intimate feel, same commitment to quality. Reed was there for the opening night, not taking over, just supporting, making sure I had what I needed to succeed. Somewhere in those long planning meetings and late-night calls about kitchen equipment specifications and menu testing, our professional relationship shifted. I found myself looking forward to his texts, laughing at his dry observations about the restaurant industry, appreciating the way he actually listened when I spoke. A year after his initial investment, Reed asked me to dinner. Not a business meeting, an actual date. I said yes. 2 months after that, I got a strange email. Job application for a server position at our Cleveland location. The name jumped out at me immediately. Landon Sullivan. I almost deleted it. Almost told the Cleveland manager to ignore it. But curiosity got the better of me. His application was telling. After Sullivan Street Eats, closed due to market conditions, his words, he'd worked at 3 different restaurants in 8 months, each job shorter than the last. His reference list was notably sparse. In his cover letter, he emphasized his extensive experience as the face of a successful culinary brand and his natural rapport with customers. No mention of actual cooking skills. No mention of autumn. I called the manager in Cleveland. This applicant, I know him, he's problematic. Want me to trash the application? I paused, considering. No, actually bring him in for an interview, but don't tell him anything about the ownership structure. As far as he knows, you're just the general manager hiring servers. Is this some kind of test? Let's call it closure. I flew to Cleveland for the scheduled interview day and watched through the one-way glass of the office as Landon arrived. He looked different, thinner, the designer clothes replaced with off-the-rack business casual. The confident swagger dimmed but not extinguished. Still handsome, still charming with the hostess as he waited. The manager, briefed on our history, conducted a deliberately difficult interview. Challenging questions, skeptical responses. Landon worked hard to win her over, turning up the charm, name-dropping his successful food truck concept without mentioning its demise. One last question, she said, reviewing his application. I see your last name is Sullivan. Any relation to our executive chef? The confusion on his face was evident. I don't think so. What's his first name? Her name is Whitney. I wish I had a photograph of his expression in that moment. The blood draining from his face. The rapid blinking as he processed this information. Whitney works here? His voice had gone up an octave. The manager smiled professionally. Whitney Sullivan is the executive chef and owner of all Whitney's locations. Did you not research the restaurant before applying? He clearly hadn't. Had just seen upscale new restaurant and assumed it was his ticket back into the industry. I should go, he mumbled, standing abruptly. Actually, I said, stepping out of the office, I think you should stay. I won't pretend seeing Landon again didn't affect me. 3 years of marriage, another 3 of building a business together. That history doesn't just evaporate, even after betrayal. He looked smaller somehow, less shiny. His hairline had receded a bit, the confident smile replaced with uncertainty. Whitney? He managed, openly staring at my tailored chef's coat with the embroidered logo. I didn't know this was your place. Places, plural, I corrected. We have 3 locations now. 4th opening in Cincinnati next month. We? Donovan Culinary Group, my business partners. He nodded slowly, processing. I heard about your success. Didn't connect the name. Sullivan's a common name, you know. Figured it was coincidence. It's not coincidence, Landon. It's consequence. Actions have them. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. What happened to the food truck? I finally asked, though I knew the broad strokes from industry gossip. He laughed bitterly. Turns out running a successful food business is harder than it looked. Autumn had big ideas but no follow-through. The food quality, Well, let's just say your recipes weren't written down anywhere, and my memory isn't as good as I thought. And Autumn? Left 6 months in. Found someone else with better prospects, I guess. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Took what money we had left, too. I should have felt vindicated. The cosmic justice of it all. But standing there looking at the shell of the man who had once been my husband, I mostly felt tired. The anger that had fueled me for so long had burned down to embers. "You were going to hire me, weren't you?" he asked suddenly. "As a server. You were going to make me wait tables at your restaurant. The ultimate payback." I shook my head. It crossed my mind, for about 5 seconds, but I've moved beyond that kind of thinking. So why am I here? Closure, maybe, or just curiosity. To remind myself how far I've come. The door opened, and Reed walked in, immediately assessing the situation. "Everything okay in here?" His hand found the small of my back, supportive but not possessive. "Reed, this is Landon Sullivan, my ex-husband." Reed's expression remained neutral, but I felt his body tense slightly. He extended his hand professionally. "Reed Donovan, I've heard about you." Landon shook it, recognition dawning. "Donovan? As in Donovan Culinary Group? You're Whitney's investor?" "Partner," Reed corrected. "In multiple senses." His wedding band caught the light as he lowered his hand. Landon looked between us, connecting the dots. "You married your investor? Talk about landing on your feet." I felt a flash of the old anger. I married a man who recognizes my talent instead of exploiting it, who celebrates my success instead of claiming it as his own. The investment came before any personal relationship, because my food and my vision were worth investing in. "Unlike you," Reed added calmly, "I knew a good thing when I saw it." Landon had the grace to look embarrassed. "Look, I should go. This was unexpected. Congratulations on your success, Whitney. You deserve it." As he turned to leave, I surprised myself by calling after him. "Landon." He paused. "The manager wasn't just giving you a hard time. We actually do need servers in Cleveland. The pay is good, benefits after 90 days. If you want the job, it's yours." He looked at me with genuine confusion. "Why would you do that for me?" "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Proving I'm not the person you thought I was. Someone who values loyalty above talent. Someone without vision." Later that night, in our hotel room, Reed asked if I was really going to hire Landon. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to. Not to lord my success over him, but to show that I've grown beyond our history. That I can be the bigger person." Reed pulled me close. "You already are the bigger person. Whether you hire him or not doesn't change that." He was right, of course. 3 years have passed since that encounter. Whitney's now has 7 locations across 3 states. We've been featured in Food and Wine, received a James Beard nomination, been approached about a cookbook, my cookbook, with my name on the cover. Landon did take the server job. Worked 6 months in Cleveland before transferring to our Pittsburgh location, where he eventually became a competent floor manager. We're not friends. We'll never be friends. But we've found a professional civility. Sometimes I think it's harder for him than for me, watching my vision succeed where his failed. Being a small part of an enterprise that could have been partly his if he'd made different choices. As for me, I'm expecting our first child this fall. Reed is already researching the best hybrid strollers for navigating professional kitchens. We're in talks to open locations in Chicago and New York next year. Sometimes when I'm expediting during a busy service, calling orders and inspecting plates, I flash back to those 4 a.m. mornings in the food truck, doing all the work while someone else took all the credit. To the humiliation of those mocking videos. To the devastation of losing everything I'd worked for. Those memories don't sting the way they once did. Without that rock bottom, I might never have found the courage to build something truly mine. Might never have met Reed. Might still be standing in someone else's shadow instead of casting my own light. The greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's thriving so completely that their actions become nothing but a footnote in your success story. And looking around at the life I've built from the ashes of betrayal, I can honestly say, I wouldn't